The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and good evening and good morning for the others in the UK, and a very warm welcome to this web clinic. CoordiKids is committed to provide the information and the strategies to help as many children as possible. Just housekeeping at the moment, make sure that your speakers or headphones are connected to your computer and that your computer's volume is turned up. You do not need a microphone. Everyone except me are muted. We'll email a link to the recording of this web clinic within the next week. You can make use of the question box to ask questions at any time during the web clinic. However, I shall not be able to view the questions before the end during question time. I'll keep you busy with my slides and voice for about 35 to 45 minutes. Thereafter, I'll answer your questions. You can also contact me via email at marga@CoordiKids with any questions or concerns that you might have, and I'll answer these individually, and of course your privacy will be valued. Use the menu on the right of your screen, which looks like this. You can check your sound in the box as indicated. Post your questions in the box marked questions. Please do not use the chat box, as I shall not be looking at the questions before the end. The slides are available for you to download at this time. The slides are numbered so you can relate your notes to the slides at a later time. I have also included a food games article which you can download at any time. It's just a nice article that I came across, and I just think it's great and it will help many people. I am thrilled about the large crowd. My apologies to many of the listeners in the UK and US who cannot listen to us at this time because of the time difference. Although a lady in the UK said she will be listening at, I think it's 7 o'clock in the morning now. So I'm very welcome if you can make it to listen at this time. I hope this web clinic and the recording of it will give you insight in the oral motor sensitive kids, usually the chewers and or the picky eaters, to help you and the children in your life. Okay, I am Marga Gray, a pediatric occupational therapist. I have been an OT with a keen interest in sensory integration and sensory processing for many years. Actually, I'm talking in decades and not anymore in years. I'm also a mother of 3 adult children and 4 gorgeous grandchildren. My latest focus is CoordiKids, as I want to help as many children as possible, and online programs are the easiest effective way to reach many children. CoordiKids is committed to provide information and strategies to help as many children as possible. We rely on many years' experience and on the latest research to ensure that the information we provide, our programs, and our advice are the best and the most relevant to help your child and all the children in your life and in your care. This web clinic is one in a series of short web clinics on sensory modulation presented by CoordiKids. Previous web clinics in this series have discussed movement-seeking behavior, movement avoidance behavior, and tactile defensiveness. The umbrella term sensory processing disorder, or SPD, was explained in the first in this series. You are most welcome to contact us to receive a recording of these web clinics to ensure that you understand where the oral motor sensitivities fit in under this umbrella. SPD is a condition in which the brain has trouble receiving and processing information from the senses. The modulation of the sensations is one of the pillars of sensory motor disorder. Sensory modulation disorder leaves many children with symptoms of anxiety, with concentration issues, and with poor coping skills for social and school environments. Parents are often in despair as they find it difficult to understand their child and to cope with the child's issues. Now also, sensory modulation is a neurological function and is the organization of sensory information for ongoing use. One of the behaviors that we observe in children with a sensory modulation disorder is the avoidance of some foods or difficulty to chew and eat some foods, and the need to chew on non-food items such as a pencil, a collar, or a sleeve. Some children tend to overfill the mouth and others are not aware of food on the outside of the mouth, making them messy eaters. In this web clinic, we'll discuss the underlying issues of the problems that Chomp and Champ experience. Once one understands the underlying issues and the reason for the behavior, it is easier to help the child. I'll try to explain why Chomp chews on non-food items, and why does Champ avoid many food, and why is he a picky eater. Then we'll discuss some strategies to help these two boys. Okay, we'll discuss Chomp and Champ. Chomp chews on everything, from putting his fingers in his mouth to his headband and collar. His pencil is chewed on. He bites his nails. Champ is not a chewer, but he is a picky eater who consumes a limited diet. He avoids many foods. Champ is also sensitive to textures in food. He prefers soft food such as mashed potatoes, and he refuses to eat it when his mother tries to hide some mincemeat or veggies in the potatoes. Champ refuses to try new and unfamiliar foods. Both these boys, like many other children with food issues, prefer to eat chicken nuggets and hot potato chips. Now, before we continue our discussion of Chomp and Champ, I want to briefly give you some background of sensory processing disorder, for those who haven't had the opportunity to listen to the first webinars. A need to chew and being a picky eater are both part of the sensory processing disorder, or SPD, and it's common amongst the SPD population. They usually have problems with some of the other aspects of SPD as well. Thus, it is important to see feeding and mouthing as part of the bigger concept of SPD. SPD, as you all know by now, stands for Sensory Processing Disorder. We have discussed this condition in detail in the first web clinic. If you did not listen to it, please send your interest to receive a free recording as soon as possible. I'm going to recap on SPD very quickly. SPD is the process by which sensory information is sent to the brain, and the messages sent back to the body is called the sensory processing, that whole process. If there is something wrong with this process, we call it sensory processing disorder. The nosology of SPD was compiled by Miller and others. I have used it in the first web clinic of the series where we have discussed all 3 disorders under the umbrella of SPD. The present series of web clinics are focused on the modulation disorders. The first in the series was a web clinic on the modulation of movement. We met Zigzaggy, our active and movement-seeking boy. Then we met Snog, the girl with tactile defensiveness, and the previous web clinic was about Dozy, the movement avoider. The chewers and picky eaters also have sensory modulation problems. As indicated in the diagram, they can be over-responsive or under-responsive, and or seeking and craving. The chewers and picky eaters have problems with the processing of the oral sensations, so the sensations around the mouth, the tongue, the inside and the outside of the mouth and lips. However, oral motor problems also have an underlying motor disorder, often indicated by a form of dyspraxia. This can affect the ease of eating and the ability to chew and swallow certain foods and certain textures in foods. In the first web clinic, we have covered the sensory thresholds. There are high and low thresholds. Most of us move between the optimal thresholds for self-regulation and functioning. Although we have higher and lower thresholds depending on the time of the day, the activity, that we are involved in, and the emotional status that we are in. For example, you might feel relaxed after a massage, or quite anxious before an important meeting. Functioning is impacted once we move out of the optimal thresholds. Champ has a low threshold for experiences of textures in and around the mouth. Therefore, he is labeled as a picky eater. Champ is oversensitive. He tends to be anxious and can be easily overwhelmed. Chomp presents with a high threshold for oral motor experiences and seeks more input or more experiences around the mouth. Chomp uses chewing of non-food items to self-regulate, thus to lower anxiety levels, to improve concentration, and to improve the ability to sit still. Babies use this strategy to self-regulate when sucking on a pacifier, when chewing non-food items, and when drinking a bottle. It is a fairly immature strategy to self-regulate and is often seen in children with immature central nervous systems. However, many of us use this strategy to self-regulate. I'm sure some of you are like me, who tends to eat nuts, carrots, or other crunchy foods when anxious. Some prefer to use chewing gum. Other people cannot face food when they are anxious. Champ tends to avoid food and is often in the fright or flight mode of self-regulation. Chomp tends to daydream, struggles to pay attention to tasks, and seeks oral motor experiences such as chewing. In general, sensory modulation disorders fluctuate from day to day and even from hour to hour. However, we see a fairly consistent behavior in the children with oral sensitivities or oral seeking behaviors. Some children fluctuate and will eat some foods one day and refuse to eat the same food the next day. But in most of the clients that I see, these issues are consistent throughout the day and also in different environments, such as at home and at school. I'll try to give you a definition of a picky eater. Picky eaters are very selective about what they eat. They probably have a degree of what scientists call food neophobia, which is generally defined as the reluctance to eat or even sample new foods. Children with neophobia often reject many new foods. This can result in children eating a limited variety of foods. Fussy eaters, on the other hand, will reject foods that they like one day, but then happily eat them the next day. These are more readily seen amongst babies and toddlers. Now, Champ is the picky eater we are discussing. So what does Champ do? He typically eats using his hands and avoids utensils. He does this to explore the texture, temperature, and smell of food before putting it in his mouth. He also finds it tricky to use a knife and fork. Champ, like many other picky eaters, prefers chicken nuggets and hot potato chips. Champ has a limited diet and his parents are concerned about nutrition and the effect of his general health. Champ refuses to smell, taste, or even come near vegetables and many fruits. His mother cannot trick him by hiding veggies in his food. Champ has a meltdown when he expected to eat food that he doesn't like. His parents have tried everything but cannot find a strategy to make him eat. They have tried discipline, rewards, punishment, all the nice things. Nothing works. Champ eats extremely slow. His parents often expect of him to stay at the table until he finished at least a portion of his food, and this might take 1 to 2 hours. So why is Champ a picky eater? Firstly, he has a sensory modulation problem. He has a low threshold for sensations in and around his mouth, which leaves him to be overly sensitive to textures in food, smells, and tastes. What we experience as soft texture, Champ experiences as sharp and unpleasant. For example, he mentioned that he doesn't like rice because it stings him. Also, we might experience food to be a bit spicy, and he might experience the same food as extremely spicy and unpleasant. Champ has problems to process the interoception sensations. These are the sensations from the inside of the body, such as feelings of hunger and or of being full. In general, Champ is anxious, sensitive to many experiences, and highly strung. Champ also has a sensory motor problem. He has mild dyspraxia, which make some of the complex movements that he needs to put the food in his mouth, to move it to the molars to chew, to move the food back to the tongue, and to swallow. This is a complex set of movements, using the muscles in the mouth, the lips, tongue, and jaw. Champ finds it difficult to swallow some foods and will often chew meat but then spit it out after a period of time. Dyspraxia makes it tricky to use utensils, such as a knife and a fork. Therefore, Champ asks his mother to cut his food, and then he reverts to using his hands or to use only a spoon or a fork. Being a picky eater and having a low threshold for food experiences are not all negative. These people can be excellent wine tasters. They can be great chefs. They can taste what is in food and they can create fantastic flavors, something the ordinary person like I cannot do because I have a fairly high threshold for food experiences. Picky eaters can often smell and taste tea and coffee. The negatives that our picky eaters usually have is a limited diet. We have to look into what they eat and compare it to the healthy eating pyramid. So I strongly recommend you to talk to a dietitian. I have referred a number of clients for advice from a dietitian. The outcome has always been positive. Often the child's diet is healthier and more balanced than what the parent realized. Some simple strategies and small changes can ensure that your child consumes healthy foods. Champ and other picky eaters are very sensitive to smells, tastes, and flavors. They might find it difficult to cope in some environments. For example, when someone uses specific perfume, cleaning products, or shampoo, they might find it repulsive to sit next to a person with a specific body odor, or to be in a room where food is consumed. And these are smells that other people don't even smell or don't even are aware of, but these kids can be aware of that. And of course they think that everybody is smelling it and everybody is reacting in the same way that they do, but they don't show it. So then they feel like they are failing. So it's important to understand that this is not the child behaving badly. It is a real sensation that the child experiences. And although you and I do not have the same experience, we cannot judge as we do not know what the child is experiencing. This is especially tricky when a child is nonverbal and cannot explain what is disturbing him or her. Now, Chomp is a different story. He's a chewer and also has difficulty with sensory modulation. He has a high threshold for sensations of food experiences. At times, Chomp is unaware of textures, smells, and tastes, and will eat as if everything tastes the same. At other occasions, he can be sensitive to unfamiliar sensations, and he can overreact. In general, he is sensory seeking and needs more sensations rather than avoiding sensations. For example, he might overfill his mouth. He might not be aware of food falling out of his mouth or of food particles sitting around his mouth. He needs to chew and to bite to self-regulate, to reduce anxiety levels, to address daydreaming, and to improve concentration. There are positive aspects of being a chewer. The most obvious is that Chomp can use chewing to self-regulate and to reduce anxiety. He also eats more, though not necessarily a wider variety of food. Chewing on socially appropriate and acceptable objects have little effect on the child's immediate environment and on others in the area. However, the negatives of chewing is that it is usually socially unacceptable or inappropriate. It indicates to poor interoception, the feelings of hunger and of being full, and it is not hygienic. So how can we increase the variety of foods that Champ, the picky eater, is consuming? I'll mention a few strategies and talk about some of them in more detail. At first, I came upon an article from Dr. Heather Way about food games. She uses these games for children on the autism spectrum, but you can use it for any child to help a child to love food and to be interested in food. Secondly, use oral motor exercises. I'll give you some examples towards the end of this web clinic. For children with severe issues, the SOS feeding approach can be valuable. These are usually presented in groups at hospitals or other centers. SOS stands for the Sequential Oral Sensory Approach. What I like about it is that they have identified all the sequential steps to eat. The first being in the same room as food, and the last being to swallow the food. And you know what? There are about 36 steps, I think it's 36, from the first to the last step. And it shows how complex eating it is. And it provides many opportunities for praise and for celebration while the child masters one step after the other. Then, of course, this is not a problem to be fixed over a few months. It often takes many months, and you have to be patient and celebrate each small step and gain that you and your child make. You have to give your child the opportunity to feel in control and to feel that they have a say in the process. Be on the same side as your child and avoid being involved in a power play. It is most important to address other sensory modulation and sensory motor issues. For example, if the child doesn't experience hunger, there is little motivation to eat. If the child finds it difficult to sit at a table for periods of time, it is difficult to finish a meal. So consider the other issues as well. Okay, so how can we decrease Chomp's need to chew? First of all, provide socially appropriate jewelry, and I'll give you some examples. Then also the oral motor exercises that I talked about with Champ. Then also address other sensory modulation issues. You can give crunchy and chewy lunch packs to give him a lot of sensory experiences while he eats his lunch. Don't say stop chewing because he can't. Provide other options. And then also provide other strategies for self-regulation than chewing. So don't just say stop chewing, but provide other ways that he can use to either address his oral motor needs or to self-regulate. So both Chomp and Champ need increased oral motor experiences. How do we give that to them? First of all, oral motor exercises. So you can literally go on Google and you can Google in oral motor exercises and there will be plenty coming up. You can also just sit next to your child in front of a mirror and you can do funny movements with your lips, with your tongue, with your jaw, and even with your throat, like swallowing and feeling the muscles in your throat when you swallow. Kids often enjoy this, they pull funny faces, and all these exercises and movements actually give them a lot of experiences in and around the mouth. So for Champ, it will be experiences to desensitize. For Chomp, it will be experiences to provide in his seeking needs. Then snacks and lunchbox food. Provide a variety. Crunchy foods, chewy things like dried fruit, different temperatures like icicles and warm drinks, and then something to suck on. Then there are games that you can play. So you can play the food games and you can play oral motor games. Okay, so let's have a look at the oral motor exercises. First of all, the lips. Open and close your mouth. Pucker lips as for a kiss. Big smile, open mouth, and try to pucker with mouth open. Press your lips together. Those are just all examples, and you can repeat them 3 times, 10 times, depending on your child's age, depending on how much your child enjoys it. The next is tongue movements and exercises. So stick out your tongue. Move your tongue slowly from the corner of your mouth to the other corner and back again. Try to reach your chin or your nose with your tongue. Hold something like a lolly in front of the child and let him try to touch it with his tongue. Then jaw movements. So open your mouth wide and close. You can repeat that, as I said, 3 times, 10 times. Move the jaw from side to side. Pull funny faces. And then throat. Close your mouth. Slurp saliva onto the top of your tongue and then swallow. You can ask the child to put his hand on his throat and feel the swallowing movement. Then you can close your mouth, press your lips together while contracting the throat muscles. So all of these exercises you can do between 3, 10, even more repetitions, and you can break them up into sections and do it every 2 hours. You can do it 3 times a day, depending on your child and depending on the sensory diet that you want to follow with your child. Okay, let's do the next one. Is snacks for lunch boxes. Snacks that you can give your child at home. Crunchy snacks can be carrots, apples, nuts, hard candies, dried cereal, crackers, edible necklace with candy, or dry cereal. Another thing is chewy food. So chewy can be beef jerky. In South Africa it will be biltong. Dried fruit, chewing gum, which we as OTs love and teachers hate. But yeah, chewing gum is actually great for self-regulation. So if you can really regulate the use of the chewing gum at home and give it to your child for periods of time, that's quite good. Try to use the ones without any sugar in, and have strict rules about when to spit it out and what to do with it when you spit it out. Okay, temperature, frozen drinks, warm drinks, ice cream, frozen fruit or frozen fruit juice is also a good one. Then sucking, drink through a narrow twisty straw, drink through a thick liquid through a straw, hard candies, popsicles, ice cream. Now these snacks you can also keep in mind when you go to have a coffee or a meal with your child in a restaurant and your child finds it really difficult to regulate because of the noise levels, because of other sensory input. Think about what you order for your child. You might decide to order a really thick milkshake and ask him to suck that through a straw because that might help him a lot with self-regulation. So you have to observe your child and see what is the best for your child. In no way will any child with a food problem or with an eating problem enjoy all of this. It's impossible. You'll have to observe your child and see what is best for your situation and for your child. Okay, and then also in the lunch box you can have a variety of flavors. So some kids really love strong flavors and some really like bland food, so keep that in mind. Okay, let's have a look at the games. So first of all, the food game. So the food games is the one that you can download. But also I just want to quickly summarize it. The games are about make food fun. Don't eat it. It's no pressure to eat it. It's just to have fun with food. So play food games, use songs, then do some things to desensitize the child for the food that he doesn't like. So play with the food that he doesn't like. Don't eat it, just play with it. So first you have songs about food, then you have food-related items like, these plastic food that you can buy, and then you play with real food. You can float food, you can sink food, you can paint them, you can stamp with, these stamps that we use with potatoes. You can cut food, make musical instrument with some of the veggies, throw food instead of balls, like hit an apple with a bat, something like that. Make dough with food and play with the food dough. Smash food, do gardening, plant veggies, everything around food without eating it. So that's a good strategy to start with. And then when you get to meals, just have food in the middle of the table. Look at it, talk about it, sniff it, touch it with your finger. Later on, put it on your lips, towards the end on your tongue and in your mouth, and ultimately to swallow. And just keep those SOS steps in mind, that swallowing is actually I think it's about the 36th step from being in the same room with food. So this is a very, very long process to get food into the child's mouth and him to swallow it. Okay, let's have a look at oral motor games. So in the CoordiKids program, there are some games that you can play, and it's a lot of oral motor exercises throughout the program. There's not one fortnight that you only focus on oral motor. It's throughout the program. There are a lot of oral motor because it's so important for self-regulation. Then you can use blowing games. Blow, just blow air in your cheeks, blow them up. Use bubbles, use straws, candles, whistles, instruments like an harmonica, anything that your child used to blow that desensitizes the mouth on the one hand, and also it gives some oral motor experiences for the chewer. Then tongue movements, as I said with the oral motor exercises, just a lot of tongue movements, lick stamps, copy, lick your lips, touch part of your mouth with your tongue, lick different objects, although it sounds terrible because your child is 9 years old and you don't want him to lick all kinds of non-food objects. It's just a one step towards licking food. And then use the mouth in games like humming, use a vibrating toothbrush, use other instruments in the mouth. There are other vibrating toys that you can use in and around the mouth as well. Okay, then you see there are lots of socially acceptable ways to provide oral motor experiences. So the first one being blowing bubbles, which is quite a very, it's in general a very calming, self-regulating activity. You can use chewing necklaces, which are great. You can just Google them. You'll get many different ones. And they sometimes call them dog tags, sometimes jewelry, sometimes chewing necklaces, whatever. You'll get stacks of them. The problem is that everything doesn't work for all children. So if you can just buy a few cheap ones and see what your child likes and what they don't like, if you find something that your child don't like, wash it and save it for a later day. Your child might like it later on, or you might find a friend whose child loves the one that your child doesn't like, and you can exchange. Then you get little bracelets like this, which is quite good, and kids really like to bite on it, like this little girl. They can bite on it as, you know, like she does, or just in a very, very socially acceptable way, just chewing away on it very gently, but it helps them a lot with self-regulation. Then you get toys like these, almost like the teething toys that babies use, but these are actually for older children, and you'll get them on Google as well. These are lovely. They are pencil toppers. So these are lovely for the younger kids. They can chew on them instead of on the eraser or on the pencil itself. It's socially acceptable. It's fun. You also get beautiful ones that I personally like for the older children, and they are like a clear tube, so you can see through them. So the others won't even see that there is something on the child's pencil, but he will have something to chew. Because often the older children get shy to use things like this in the classroom. These I love. It looks like Lego, but they can chew on it. There's another boy chewing on a necklace around his neck. I can't exactly see it. It's some other chewing toy. And then, of course, as I said, I love the chewing gum, blowing bubbles with it. It is messy. I know teachers don't like it. I know parents don't like it. But if you can control it, it's a great tool. Okay, so let's see. There are many ideas that you can use to make eating enjoyable. Play with food. Make fun of it. Just enjoy it. Don't have to eat it. Just make faces. This is a great tray that you can use to start, and child can have a little bit of everything and start again and see which ones he can finish, and can he finish his whole dinner. This is for the kid that has moved a long way from being a picky eater. I love this. Make the kids part of the food preparation. Don't tell them to eat it. Just have fun in the kitchen. Have fun playing with food, making food, preparing food, feeding others, and enjoying that. Let the child be independent a little bit, even though they make a mess. Let them just enjoy. If the child is involved, this boy will probably at least taste what he's doing there. He's doing a great job, and it's obviously not very easy to do at his age. So he might feel really in control. He might love to see the others eat his food, and he might even take a bite himself. So more ideas to make eating enjoyable. There are a few don'ts, and I know all of you who have struggled for a long period of time will say, I know I shouldn't do this, but in the end you cannot help. So just try, please. Try not to get into a power struggle with your child. Don't tell them you have to eat this because then he will probably just not eat. He will probably cry. It will end up being the whole family unhappy. And it's just one fight after the other. Try not to do this. Leave the child to enjoy the food. Let them play with it. Let them have fun. Throw it around. Make a mess. Have fun. Be on your child's side, not against your child. Be with your child. Let him feel that you are helping. And I know some of you have tried this and have tried this for thousands of times, and the only option that you can see left is this, but try to get back to being on your child's side and having fun. More strategies to make eating enjoyable. Food games. Just a summary. Oral motor exercise 3 to 6 times a day. More or less, try to get it to 2 hourly. That's a very good time frame. Desensitize sensory issues. Whatever, if your child is auditory sensitive, if your child is sensitive to touch, get those strategies from your therapist and do that also 3 to 6 times a day. Provide opportunities to chew throughout the day with all the examples that I have given to you now. Have healthy and positive conversations around the table about food and about other things. Make it a lovely time at the table. Involve the child in food preparation and in planning meals. Let them have a say in what shall we have for dinner tonight and how are we going to prepare it, and let's do it. And let's see if Dad enjoys it. And perhaps you might have just a lick and spit it out again. Provide support, don't criticize. Set an example. If you don't eat, your child might not eat either. Talk about the benefits of food. Talk about how food is nutritious and how food builds your body and how food can make you clever and how food will make you strong. Don't necessarily talk about it while you want. Don't tell them you'll get strong, you have to eat this piece of meat. But while you drive in the car, you can just have a discussion on how good meat is and why. Then be sensitive to other sensory issues like difficulty to sit still, using utensils, auditory, the sounds in the environment, other smells and touch experiences of your child. Just be sensitive to that. Okay, then I couldn't help to just tap the brain of one of my colleagues, Charlie Chapman, a dietitian, and then she gave such fantastic information that I thought this would be a very short webinar, but the more I researched and tried to be to the point, the more I came across essential aspects of feeding and eating, and of course very useful tips and strategies to help you and the children in your life. So Charlie is a dietitian with a keen interest in many areas of her work, including children. And she gave us fantastic tips, and I want to share it with you, although this webinar is quite long at the moment. So I'll just be quick. So she gave us the following tips on the essential foods and how to identify if a picky eater is actually eating a healthy diet. So consider whether the child is including some food from each of the 5 core food groups. So meat or alternatives to meat, grains, fruit, vegetables, and dairy. A food diary can be very helpful in identifying the gaps. Remember, children will not eat as much as adults and often eat small amounts of food regularly throughout the day. Use the eatforhealth.gov.au website to cross-reference the amount your child is eating to the recommended serves they might require for their age. Protein is of particular importance for growing bodies. Children need to be including high-quality protein sources every day. For example, meat, chicken, fish, legumes, eggs, and dairy. If children are excluding core food groups, particularly protein, it is important to have their growth assessed by a health professional, for example, a GP, a pediatrician, or a dietitian. If they are excluding meat alternatives, have their blood iron levels checked as well. Remember that children will not like all foods. It is normal for children to not like all foods that they are exposed to or change their food preferences over time. If children are becoming more restricted with the variety of foods that they are eating or are not willing to try new foods, then these are often warning signs that they may struggle to achieve a balanced diet. And then Tali was so kind to give us some ideas on how to expand the food variety of a picky eater. So remember, children can take a number of times before they will accept a new food. And research says up to 20 times. Isn't that amazing? And Tali says that those with sensory issues can take many more times before they will accept new foods. So repeat presentation and consistency with how you present the food to a child with sensory issues or with a picky eater is very important. Then ensure the child is not filling up on other foods or drinks like milk throughout the day, which is impacting on their appetite and willingness to trial new foods. Consider all aspects that may affect a child's eating, not just the food. For example, the environment, the noise levels in the area, the posture that the child has at the table setting, the ability the child has to sit still, all of those aspects. For picky eaters with sensory issues, focus on foods which are similar in texture, temperature, smell, flavor, etc., to those that they are already eating, and extend variety from there. Then focus on introducing foods that will help to fill the gaps in food variety. For example, if including no meat or alternative to meat, try to work on this group first. Then introduce new foods when the child feels best, not in the evening when the child is very tired after a long day. Then utilizing routines, stories, games, special interests, etc. around food can be a key factor to success for some children. It is amazing how much insight you gain by talking to children about the food they like, the food they dislike, and what exactly they do like and they do not like about it. And as I said, that discussions doesn't have to be when you are busy eating or trying to eat. It can be at any time of the day when you're with food or not with food. It can be a good time to talk about it while you work in the garden, in a vegetable garden, for instance, or driving the car, or just, just having a chat in your lounge room, building puzzles or whatever. So don't leave the food talks only for times that the child is spending with food. Okay, thank you so much, Dali, for this. It's really helpful and it's fantastic information. Okay, so therapy and other interventions. Let's have a look, first of all, from my point of view, sensory integrative therapy is extremely important for children with eating problems. First of all, an assessment is, of course, very important, a questionnaire on what the child is eating and what foods they prefer, when they eat, how they eat, and an assessment on all the other sensory issues, and also on praxis issues. Then individual therapy is recommended to address all sensory issues. It's recommended to address praxis, and then the CoordiChild program is great to address all of these, and you can do it in the comfort of your home. Then other interventions might be speech pathology, dietetics, specialized food clinics that you find in hospitals and specific centers, and then the SOS feeding groups that you find also often in hospitals. I don't know in other areas of the world where you find them. In Australia, I think it's, or in Queensland at least, it's mostly in hospitals. And then there might be a differential diagnosis. It's not necessarily sensory modulation problems. It can be dyspraxia, and as I have explained, that difficulty to actually move the food around in your mouth from your tongue to your teeth, from your teeth to your tongue, and to swallow. And that's a lot of different movements involved that has to be performed in the correct sequence, otherwise you cannot swallow. So if the child has dyspraxia, that can definitely impact on his eating and his enjoyment of eating. Then the child can have other specific oral and motor problems like tongue tie, which will also impact on his ease of eating. And then, as I said, sensory processing disorder, specifically oral movement, touch, and interoception. Okay, so this is more or less the end of this webinar. I just want to go to the question and answers. And I want to read the question from Kathy. I think there are many people who feel like this. Kathy says, when I give my 9-year-old veggies, even just a spoonful, when she eats them, after intense pressure to eat them, she will physically gag and occasionally throw up her entire dinner onto her dinner plate. I hope I can get some help from this webinar, what to do. I've tried the nice approach, on plate, praise, trying, like over 1,000 times. And I believe you, Kathy. And that's why I said when I discussed the different options that you have, and when I said, please don't get into a fight and a power play with your child, I was thinking of you and many other parents that I have met. And I can just imagine when your child is 9-year-old, you had 9 years of that. I hope I gave you some answers. What I would suggest is just to, involve her in preparation of food, even in just, she's 9 years old. I expect she's a girl, but anyway, 9 years old, she can decide what we have for dinner. And yes, she would like chicken nuggets or whatever, but her brother might like some carrots and mom would like some broccoli, so we have to buy that, but she doesn't have to eat it. She's going to buy it. She's going to see it on the table. She's going to smell it when you eat it, and that's it. And go from there step by step by step to get her closer to it. If you have more questions, please send me another email and I can give you more strategies and we can have a long talk about exactly what other options you have. Also then Victoria, she's from the UK and she is probably not listening at the moment, but I hope you'll listen to the recording later on. Victoria said her question would be around the frequency of interventions. And as I mentioned, I like 2-hourly. I know it's impossible in many instances, only when the child is at home and the parent is at home, that is an option. But you can involve daycare and you can involve schools with oral motor exercises, and you can provide those socially appropriate crunchy food at lunchtime, and for morning tea. You can provide the jewelry and the necklaces. You can provide chewing gum if you can. You can provide, there's a lot of other things that you can provide that the child can have, like on a 2-hourly interval throughout the day. And then Luke is a dad and he says, I want to enjoy meals with my child, but it's only a battle at present. Please help. So I would, Luke, I would just say play other games at the table. First of all, to enjoy the time that you spend at the table. Play board games at the same table where you have dinner. Play Lego at the same table. do games that your child enjoy, expand to the conversations about food, expand to food games at the table, and keep those 36 steps in mind that you have to go through to get your child to swallow it. Try to get away from the fight, try to get away from the power play, make it a pleasant time, and make your child involved in all the process around food and not only in the eating of the food. I hope that will help you. Okay, future web clinics. It will be more on the sensory-based motor disorders like dyspraxia, sensory motor disorder, and then I want to go into design your child's sensory diet. That will probably be only next year. Dyspraxia I hope to complete this year during November and early December, and I hope we'll see you there. You can contact us at info@CoordiKids.com. You can contact me personally at marga@CoordiKids.com. You can book a one-on-one session if you want specific answers to specific questions. The first session is always free, and often the follow-up ones too. And then yeah, you can go to our website and have a play and see what the programs we have available. One other thing was just like if you need individual answers to questions, please do not hesitate to ask. If I don't have the answers, I'm quite happy to ask. I work with a fantastic team at Taic Health. I have a fantastic team at CoordiKids, and I am quite willing to help you. I really and truly want to help the children in our lives. Don't hesitate to contact me. Listen to the other webinars, and if you need from some of the previous webinars, contact me and I will send you links to recordings of them. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to have you. I just want to see if there are any other questions. Yes, there are. So let me just get to the top one there. Is there a link to receive the free webinar on SPD, please? Yes, I will send. Please just send me, it's Ludi. Please just send me an email and I will send you the link. And then Michelle, I think, asked, do children grow more tolerant or less sensitive over time with age? Michelle, really and truly, it depends on the child. If the child is only a fussy eater, probably they will grow less tolerant or more tolerant. But if it is a sensory issue, they usually grow even less tolerant, and the diet even decreases. So it's very important to address all the sensory issues. It's very seldom that the child only have issues with one sensory modality. So usually they have with all of them, high thresholds and low thresholds, and it's very important to identify that. If you contact me, I can send you a questionnaire. You can complete that and we can discuss that on a Skype or a phone consultation, and I can just see where I can help you. And if not, I can help you to find another therapist who can help you. Okay, then what to do with a little boy who has lots of food allergies and needs to drink a high-caloric supplement milk drink due to milk allergies. Mum, oh my word, I'm not a specialist on allergies, and yes, that's a completely different story. You'll have to be in close contact to a dietitian to see what, he has to drink those supplements. That will be very important, and it will be important to check that he has a healthy diet. But I have actually had a child in therapy who had a lot of allergies, and she was about 6 years old and she still only had a supplement. She could eat, I think, potatoes and rice, and I have no, apart from addressing her sensory issues and her learning problems that she had, I don't have the expertise to give you any advice on the allergies. It is a very specialized area, and I would refer you to talk to your dietitian. I'm sure you're doing that. But once he is over his allergies, often they grow out of it. Then you can introduce food in the same way that we have discussed now, and he might just enjoy it very much. You never know when you don't have the allergies anymore. You might just enjoy all food. So see what happens, and if you have problems, then you can always contact me. But you can always. Oh, I would love you to know that you are with a very good dietitian and allergy specialist. Okay, then, okay, we've answered that one. What to do with a little boy who has lots of, I've answered that one. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. Mum wants him to eat all the time. I told her he is filling up on milk and snacks all day long. Yeah, that's a good answer. That's fine. That's exactly what I said, so that's great. Okay, and then, brilliant, thank you so much. Oh, thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate that. Okay, then my son has dyspraxia, food allergies, and gastric reflux and sensory issues. He has changed from a picky eater to chewing on everything else apart from food. Can this be like a transition phase as his sensors are changing? Yes, I think so. I definitely think so. So his thresholds have changed. And I see that quite often, that we see it in various ways. We see the thresholds change. We see that they can become quite unorganized. So we often talk about, when we start off with therapy, and we talk about disorganization before organization. That means that you start with therapy and actually the child suddenly looks as if he deteriorates and if he's going backwards, and then they organize again. So I think this is what's happening there. So he had very low thresholds. Now the thresholds have changed. It's quite high. So he has that needs. Hopefully it will normalize within the next short period of time. But with the dyspraxia, the allergies and the reflux, that's another area and another area of expertise. So you have to have a team that work with you, not only one person. Make sure that you have all on board and that you understand everything around your boy. And once again, you're welcome to contact me. I will help you where I can. Okay. Vicky, thank you. Great presentation. Thank you. And then Jasmine, how common is it for a child to be both a picky eater and a chewer? Oh yeah, very common, very common. All children surprise me all the time. So yes, that's very common, and sometimes it's just totally unpredictable as well. They jump from one to the other. The main thing is to provide those oral motor experiences for them, whether it's with food games, with food, with oral motor exercises. Just give as much as possible and you will see it will normalize. Okay, I think that was the last question. Ooh, we took a lot of time. Thank you so much. It was a full hour. Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed that, and I hope to see you at the next webinar. You'll receive a link to register for that. Thank you and goodbye.